Good morning and good afternoon, and welcome to another version of Tuesdays with Lloyds. I'm Hank Watkins, Lloyd's Regional Director and President of the Americas. I'm based in New York, but coming at you today again from my home in Connecticut. I'm very happy to be joined today by John Neal, Lloyd's CEO, and Caroline Dunn, Lloyd's Head of Market Development. Both Caroline and John are in the Lloyd's building in London, a very exciting time. You may see people walk behind their offices there. We're looking forward to talking about that reopening of the Lloyd's market towards the end of today's session. I really want to also acknowledge the audience today. We typically have distribution partners, brokers, cover holders from around the Americas region, risk managers, and other stakeholders, friends of Lloyd's. We've really enjoyed being with you on so many Tuesdays since last fall. And today, again, welcome our leadership team from London to go over a number of topics with us. It's been a very interesting time, clearly for all of us over the past 14 months or so. I welcome any questions you might have. I'll be monitoring the Q&A box. Please try not to put them in the chat. It's better to put them in the Q&A. We'll carry on with our conversation for about 30 to 35 minutes, and after that, we'll open it up to Q&A with John and Caroline. So again, very happy to be here with all of you. And I look forward to a very spirited conversation. John and Caroline come at it from different perspectives. Of course, John has a long career in the industry, started as an underwriter at Lloyd's, went on to run QBE globally, and has been Lloyd's CEO for about 2.5 years. Caroline has spent most of her career in the insurance industry, originally an engineer, moved into underwriting, and the bulk of her career has been spent in the underwriting discipline and at Lloyd's as head of market oversight. A very interesting approach that we take to making sure the market sustains profitable underwriting growth year over year. She's recently transitioned to a role of global head of market development, which in a sense marries those two very important disciplines at Lloyd's and gives us an opportunity as the corporation to become a much more commercial partner globally to all of our stakeholders. So very excited to open up the conversation with John and Caroline. Let's kick off initially with just a quick reflection on what we've been through for the past 14 months. Clearly, COVID-19 continues to be a major story and a tragedy really for many countries in the world. Lots of countries are getting through it more quickly than others, and our thoughts are with those who are still struggling through this pandemic. From a perspective of performance, Lloyd's has been on a trend towards improving performance over the past couple of years. 2017, with major catastrophes, especially in the U.S. with Harvey, Irma, and Maria, led us to a 114% combined ratio. Over time, through a series of efforts in the Lloyd's market led by Caroline and her team to bring that loss ratio down under 100, we made a lot of progress. And absent COVID-19 claims, which I suppose any carrier can say these days, we would have been under 100% for 2020. John and Caroline, I'd love to hear your perspectives on how important underwriting performance remains at Lloyd's as we go into 2021 and beyond. Maybe start with John.
Hank, thank you. And it's a real pleasure to be with everyone today. And I'm glad you started with me because Caroline always sounds so much more interesting than me. So I'm glad you give me a little bit of a head start. It's been an incredible 15 months, hasn't it? And congratulations to everyone in the States at the progress that you're making in managing your way the other side of COVID and lockdown. And let's hope that all the talk that's going on behind the scenes about a corridor opening between the US and the UK is correct, and that we can begin that opportunity to connect physically. A couple of things from me on performance generally. I think good performance is the entry ticket for everybody really in terms of giving you the excuse to do everything else you want to do. So we have to perform to demonstrate our credentials credibly to every stakeholder, whether that's the customer, the broker, or for fellow insurers in the marketplace. So we shouldn't be ashamed about putting performance front and center of our thinking. And we've worked really very, very hard, as Hank suggested, over the past 3 years to sort of snap Lloyd's back into shape. I think we have the opportunity to show the market what good performance looks like in our area of commercial corporate and specialty insurance and reinsurance. And I won't rehearse our full year 2020 results when you sort of look through COVID, but when you do look through COVID, you can see exactly the mark that that's had. So been a tough 3 years to get to where we wanted to be. We do feel that that work's been well executed. And before Caroline comments, the only other thing I'd say is it's been interesting looking through the COVID lens in 2020 and the dynamic that that's had on business. I think what we've seen is that business has been able to connect and communicate well, much as we're doing today. And we've seen that manifest in renewal retention levels, the like of which we've never seen before. But interestingly, it has slowed the flow of new business volume and has actually slowed the transfer of business, because as we know, if you need to collaborate or be creative, or even dare I say it, socialize, that's been harder. So we've seen less new business volumes, higher renewal retention. And I don't think that's necessarily the best for the end customer, because I think some of that churn, some of that force to be innovative is important. So it'll be interesting to see how things play out in 2021.
Thanks.
Caroline, I'd love your perspective on being the head of oversight for a number of years at Lloyd's.
Yeah, thanks, Hank. I suppose from my side, I was really involved in that work, wasn't I? When I was looking after the underwriting team, and we worked hard as a corporation, but to be honest, the market works a lot harder. And did the things that it needed to do to get to where we are now, which is a place where ex-COVID we can start seeing that's the route to that sustainable, profitable performance. So. And as John said, it's something that we needed to do to make sure that that we are here for the long term, and we are here for our brokers, for our customers, and for the industry, moving forward. And what's great is sort of where we're ending up now, and the platform it gives us looking forward. We are there with many of our businesses, performing well with that sustainable performance, and it allows us, given where we are, to be able to look to the future and think, well, how do we make sure that we can take advantage of the market as it is, and the opportunities that poses for us to support our brokers and our customers and our cover holders moving forward. So it's been a lot of hard work, but we're in a position where that attritional ratio is coming down, and where things are looking good going forward.
Well, thank you, Caroline, and thank you, John. And love to move to the commercial aspect, the growth aspect, and we can't go too much deeper into this conversation without a reference to the future at Lloyd's. How do you view that as it's coming together quickly over the next couple of years, helping us facilitate growth as we move forward in a more profitable environment?
I think, Hank, profitable growth is the underwriter's holy grail. That really is the elixir of success for every insurance business. And we want to see a much larger Lloyd's marketplace. Simple fact. I think, and you'd expect me to say this as the CEO of Lloyd's, I think Lloyd's is the crossroads for insurance and reinsurance. It is the crossroads for commercial, corporate, and specialty insurance and reinsurance. So I think we have the opportunity, we have the capability, and we have the appetite to grow. But to enable us to do that, we've got to invest in the best underwriting tools. We've got to demonstrate that we are legitimately the most advanced insurance marketplace in the world. We've got to demonstrate that we're connected, that we can innovate, and we can really attract talent. So in addition to getting performance right, the digitalisation of the marketplace and setting the right tone for culture have sort of set para pursuit for us with two important agenda items. And I think, when you talk of the future of Lloyd's, what we're really trying to do is just power a right first time and speed access to the market. So we are literally talking about the ability to go from quote to bind to technical account in seconds, a process that literally takes weeks today. So that's the power we're attempting to put behind the marketplace. We were just doing sessions earlier today, actually, with the market to give an update on where we're at, and we're feeling quietly confident that we can make the step change, if you like, the move to light speed, to ensure that we tick that box of being the most advanced insurance marketplace that people can trade in. And I think equally and importantly, sat alongside that, We do want to demonstrate that, in today's world, in today's connected world, there is still a value proposition in physically being able to connect and demonstrating that London and Lloyd's can still be a magnet for talent in the marketplace. So both those agenda items are critically important for us.
Thank you, John. And maybe a question for Caroline. This is a little bit off script, but the majority of our audience knows that we at the corporation have that platform where we bring underwriting talent and capital together and globally through our licenses enable a classic turnkey operation for people who want to be on our platform. And that interest is growing all the time, sometimes from non-traditional forms of capital as well as traditional. But Caroline, you've sat there in the center for a number of years now. It is a challenge at times to bring 80, 90 or so syndicates together in the same direction, especially when it comes to underwriting performance and the exercise you've gone through the past couple of years. Do you want to give us a comment, perspective on how now in your new role as head of market development, you're marrying those two and bringing us forward as a more commercial partner to those 80 or 90 plus syndicates and the Lloyd's brokers that make up that ecosystem?
Yeah, it's a good question actually, and something that we're looking to make sure that we do both in my area, but also across the broader markets team, to make sure that we've got that balance between profitability and making sure that we're supporting profitable growth and the opportunities that exist because of where we are in the market at the moment. So in my role with my team, as you sort of picked on, we've got we look after a number of relationships. So be that with our syndicates and making sure that we sort of understand, what they're doing with our account management team, be that with, the new entrants and, how we look at our, new opportunities and new syndicates that might want to come and join the market, or be that with our brokers. It's actually really good to, to have that underwriting background and to know about all of the things that we do to support, the planning process and to support making sure that we do have the sustainable, profitable performance. So, yeah, whether that's reviewing, having the insight as to how some of the processes work so that we can, talk to and coach, people who are looking to enter the market about the things that are really important to us, being able to challenge their plans, or actually being able to, talk to brokers and make sure that they fully understand, the work that we've done, but also how we're going to take it going forward, and that we will be viewing, profitability as something that, we just have to keep doing for the long term, as well as, balancing that with looking at the opportunity that there is in the marketplace and how we can support our syndicates and our brokers and ultimately our customers, with solutions that allow us to grow. So yeah, so it's actually, I think it's it's a good background to have actually coming into the market development role to know more about underwriting and performance and how we manage it. Absolutely,
because people like to do business with people who are winning, right? And that's that's the classic understatement, if you will. And there was a question, I mentioned capital providers. There's a question from the audience. I'll just jump into that real quickly. They'd like to know how many, if any, unlimited liability names are still at Lloyd's. That's a pretty straightforward answer.
Joe, I have a go at that. There are not many is the honest answer to that question. So about 9% of the capacity or capital that sits behind the Lloyd's market comes from individual members, which is neat. I like it. It's not different to having retail shareholders and institutional shareholders. So I think it's good to have individual interests. That's about 3,000 individuals, but you are talking about a very, very limited number that still have unlimited liability. So in the modern world, very few people that would contemplate unlimited liability. So there remains a legacy which could apply for some very, very personal reasons to those individuals, but you are talking about a handful of those 3,000 still having unlimited liability.
And majority of capital is from corporate capital. There are quite a few U.S. And Canadian insurance companies that own Lloyd's syndicates, a lot of pension funds, and the new ILS vehicle, London Bridge, that is going to be allowing different forms of capital in.
Correct. So, if you look in 2021, there'll be about $45 billion of flow underwritten on the Lloyds platform. Around about half of that comes from North America. So, in a way that shouldn't surprise anybody. The North American market is the most important market in the world and will be for the long foreseeable future. So you get our deserved attention for all the right reasons, and they're critically important to us. And that means that, for some of the carriers that we would admire and respect in the US, they also have direct access to the Lloyds platform, whether that's the AIGs or the Chubbs or the Travelers or the Hartfords or many others of this world. So, we hope that many will continue to see, Lloyds as an arrow in their quiver of the way in which they can go about the business they do, including doing business in the States. So hugely important to us to be present in the US, both physically, practically, and from a capital perspective.
Absolutely. And to tie together the performance management imperative along with the commercial growth imperative, last week, Patrick Tiernan joined us from Aviva to become our new Chief of Markets. Very exciting to have him leading that entire effort, in addition to strategy and a bunch of other hats he's wearing. So we'd love to get him on.
I'm sure you'll get him there very, very quickly. It's quite an interesting thought process. Certainly when I joined as CEO, we had two different directorates, for want of a better description, dealing with the sort of two sides of the platform, one dealing with the network and distribution and business development, and one dealing with performance management. I think they're two sides of the same coin, if I'm honest. You've got to be able to rub your tummy and pat your head at the same time in this game. And I think you've got to understand both sides of that coin well. There's no point in us signing off on a underwriting business plan if the distribution partners and brokers think that they're going to bring a completely different book of business for the underwriters to actually underwrite. So understanding how both sides work together is critically important. And so we've tied that responsibility up under one individual, and that person's Patrick. And what we wanted to do was, in reinforcing that understanding, was ask someone, and that someone is Caroline, who was very much sat in the performance space, to translate onto the global network and the distribution and development side of the business. So take that working knowledge and really ensure that we could engender the development of the platform, particularly for the interests of our distribution partners. But Caroline, you can add a bit more color to how you see yourself and your role over the next few years.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty exciting time in the market, isn't it? There's been, we're at a point where we're, the results are, excluding COVID, are enabling us to, to actually think about further opportunities. So it's, I think it's pretty exciting. I've sort of explained to a few people I'm probably gamekeeper turned poacher. Which sort of does allow you to sort of be able to think, well, what are the things that, what are the things that are going to be a challenge for businesses or for opportunities. And actually, you can have some really good early conversations to make sure that, that those sorts of challenges and things are, those discussions are had up front. I think that's one of the really good things that I'm going to sort of bring to the role. And, as I said earlier, having the underwriting background means that you can have, good discussions with all of our stakeholders about, sort of what's important to help us, support the profitability, but also help, support growth as well.
I think it's one thing to add, feeling like an old man in insurance these days, having been around for 35 years, the marketplace that we're in today, you see happen very, very rarely. When you actually see a marketplace where, the end customers really understood risk, COVID has brought systemic risk to the forefront. And at a point where we were trying to translate the tangible product to the intangible balance sheet, you've got a customer base that's understood risk. You've got a marketplace that's repriced and thought, we've got to get the right price in a very low interest rate environment for the product. But we've got to innovate. We've got to make sure the right products and services are there. The world's talking about climate change, the biggest single opportunity we'd have had in our lifetime to reinvent the products and services we present. This time comes along once in a quarter of a century. So where you work, what you do, where you can make a difference is so important. And I think, you know, I feel that passionately that Lloyd's is a place that can make a difference. I know Caroline does, from having worked very closely with her for the last 12 months. And that's, you know, to start the question, that's why Patrick's joined us. He feels that as well. He feels that, you know, it's really important to be in the right place for the marketplace we see today. And Lloyd's can represent, if we do it well, the very best that our industry has to offer.
You know, John and Caroline, your enthusiasm resonates from across the ocean, 5 hours ahead of us. As we return to healthier times, of course, you'll both be over here, along with Patrick and a number of other colleagues in the London market, hundreds of brokers and underwriters, frankly, as we reopen. But Caroline, I'd love to turn to you to get a sense of how you're going to continue supporting the U.S. in your new role. You know, there are at least 50 or 60 syndicates in any given year that do business in the U.S. and Canada. Love to hear your thoughts on how we continue that enthusiasm on their behalf.
Yeah, well, since I took the role at the end of last year, it's been really great to see the depth of the relationships that we already have in the US, and to see that level of engagement that we have and that the syndicates have with the marketplace. You know, we've got such a long history of supporting US business. You know, we're really proud of that. I'm proud, you know, that we're the, you know, top E&S writer and a top reinsurer supporting the market. And I've had the pleasure to meet, you know, a number of brokers and cover holders, you know, actually starting on my first day in the role at CIIB at in October last year. And what really struck me is the level of commitment from both sides to sort of make the most out of the relationship that we have and the opportunity that we have at the moment. So, you know, obviously we're writing 53% of our business in the Americas, and it's a strong market. It's a, you know, a really big marketplace, and will continue to be one of our, you know, major focuses over the next you know, coming years. To support it, you know, obviously we're looking at you know, how we work with our brokers, and we want to make sure that we're actually you know, supporting strategically our broker and our cover holder relationship. So you'll see more from me and the team sort of doing that as we move forward. And actually locally on the ground, you know, we've been investing over the last couple of years in the region. So obviously Carey Bond has joined, you know, to head up claims. And that's, you know, sort of worked really well, particularly as we go through things like catastrophes, you know, having that person on the ground to enable us to lead our claims responses invaluable. And he's also been really working hard on Future at Lloyd's claims work stream. We've also got big distribution presence in the US. So Uwe Schobert, who is my head of distribution, sort of joined in September in Chicago. And, you know, he's helping me lead how do we work with our distribution partners. And he's doing it, you know, on the ground from the US, and helping, you know, get our global team to support, you know, what we need to do to support businesses there. And, you know, in Canada as well, you know, we've got Mark Lippman, who's sort of new on the pitch, who's also, you know, sort of leading the team there. And, you know, Canada's also a really big marketplace for us. Actually, as we move forward, it'd be really interesting to see what opportunities there are there and what we can do to support them. So there's a lot going on, and a lot of things that that we're doing both on the ground and from London to support us writing more business there.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline, and thank you, John. And again, a reminder to the audience, we have a number of colleagues throughout the U.S., Canada, Latin America, not the Caribbean, but we cover the area as best we can on behalf of the market. And anytime you have questions about your relationship with the Lloyd's market, we're happy to get involved. And if we can't help you in a certain way, we will certainly let you know and direct you to the right people. So just a quick reminder of that. There are lots of really good questions here, so I am not ignoring them, but I'm trying to fit them in at the appropriate time in the conversation. What I'd love to jump to is a perspective from both Caroline and John about how Lloyd's from the inside is different from what you perceived it from the outside. Many of us who join Lloyd's come from a different career path, perhaps, or from a business that is driven by a strict P&L. We're a little bit different inside the corporation. Love to get your perspectives, starting with John.
Wow, that's a big question, isn't it? Because I've sort of been inside, outside, outside, inside, and inside, outside, I think. So the building that I'm sat in, the building that Lloyd's opened in October '86, I walked in on day one as an underwriter. So I remember the market from the underwriter's chair, and then have had an association with businesses that have owned interests at Lloyd's. I own my own Lloyd's managing agency in my time, and my time with the Australian insurer QBE had a very significant business at Lloyd's, which they still have. So part of the thought process for me in coming back in was to understand and be convinced that the world saw a value proposition in what Lloyd's can offer, and the feedback on that was resounding. I think particularly from the US market. Hank, you'll remember when you and I first met, I hadn't joined Lloyd's, but I wanted to come to see friends in the US to get their perspective on the value they saw at Lloyd's, and I think the value was great. But we got some very specific requests, and those requests have been centered around the agenda that we've been following, which is, look, demonstrate that there is a performance differential in the Lloyd's marketplace, really bring the market into the 21st century. Please put innovation back on the table and be determined to be at the forefront of the way in which we think about the insurance landscape. And please make it a magnet for the best talent that we can gather to solution for our clients or for our distribution partners. So I think those are the areas that we've tried to work on, really to take the best of Lloyd's heritage, but represent that in the world today where the science is as important as the art of underwriting. So that's what we're trying to do. And the direction that we're given has been driven from the outside. It's what people have told us that they want. And I hope that's being reflected on what today's audience are hearing and seeing.
Yeah, thank you, John. There's a lot there. We could spend 3 hours talking about any one of those topics. Caroline, encapsulate your before and after period in a couple of minutes, please. Tough decision, but.
What was to why I wanted to join Lloyd's?
Or just in general, from your outside perspective as an underwriter, in an organization where you're judged by profitability, coming to Lloyd's, just different, a spokesperson from the center for the insurance marketplace globally.
Yeah, completely. I used to walk past the building when I worked, sort of next door, and just wonder what actually happened inside, and sort of how it worked, and it was one of the dispelling the sort of the myths of sort of real specialty insurance was one of the reasons that that I wanted to join. Obviously, I'm a liability underwriting expert. That was sort of what I was doing in my previous life. And coming in and seeing the way it works and seeing the what we do as a marketplace has been absolutely fascinating. And I still learn something new sort of every day. I think Lloyd's is unique compared with a lot of individual insurance companies. And another thing that sort of really attracts me to working in Lloyd's and the corporation is what we can do as a corporation that actually you can't necessarily do if you're looking, if you're one of the individual insurers in the market. We've got that sort of unique ability to bring people together in the same way that we bring the market together. And whether that's things like culture, that we might want to to work with the market on to improve our leadership in terms of things like our purpose and what it is we want to do in areas like COVID or say Future Set, where we're looking really to bring people together to look at systemic risk and see how we can address some of those sort of big challenges. There's things that you can't really do on your own, and actually, Lloyd's can do and can help the market to do so. So that's like another, one of the big things that really sort of, sort of keeps me at Lloyd's actually. Given I've been here for a few years.
So Caroline, that's a perfect segue into a conversation about our ESG report, which was issued back in mid-December. And my friend Mark Rector in Chicago, who is our Zoom wizard, at some point will hopefully put up the link to that report for everybody to take down. But There's a lot there. We've had a question here from the audience about Lloyd's getting out of oil and gas exploration. Certainly the culture conversation is important to everybody, as is climate. It's the year of climate. So again, we could talk for hours about all of these. John and Caroline, I'd love to hear from your perspective. I suppose answer the question, if you will, about Lloyd's position on oil and gas. It is more specific than that. And then Caroline will go to culture with you and talent, et cetera.
Yeah, I'll kick it off. I mean, I think, and you sort of said it in framing the question, Hank, I mean, every discussion that we all have today has sustainability, climate, or inclusion in it somewhere. And I think we should want to be part of that debate. And when you talk about ESG, and you've highlighted there is an S and a G in there, it's not just about environment. Everyone tends to get stuck on E. And so I'll save the S and save the G for Caroline. But, on the environment, I can relate to this very strongly. I spent 8 years, living in Australia. And if you live in Australia, and many of you would have visited, climate stares you in the face, and it's been the number one agenda item for the country for a long time. And yet 70% of that country's energy comes from coal. So there is always a paradox and a juxtaposition of where you want to go and where you are today. And I think what's important is you do both. So I think we have a responsibility to understand what the green industrial revolution looks like, and to demonstrate that we can design products and services that will support the change in infrastructure and needs that the world's looking for. So should we do that? Yes, tick. Should we ensure, carbon today? Yes. Someone's got to ensure the transition, because otherwise the transition won't happen. So when we put our report out there, it is about transition. It was a consultation document. Here's our thinking. Let's discuss this for the next 12 months and decide what we want to do. But right at the heart of that report is, what does transition look like, and over what period should we talk about transition? The period we're talking about is 10 years. And that's the debate we're going through at the moment. What does transition look like? So I have no issue with saying that, do I wholeheartedly support the green industrial revolution and what that's trying to do? Wholeheartedly. And I feel we've got to get right at the front of our thinking there, because as I said earlier on, it is the biggest single opportunity we will see in our lifetimes in our industry to make change and create an excitement around the way in which we innovate. But I'm also not ashamed to say that we must ensure the transition, because if we don't ensure the transition, then the end journey cannot happen. So we will do both.
That is so true, John. And Lloyd's remains today one of the largest insurers of renewable energy around the world, and will continue to do that. And as we move into different types of energy production, whether it's hydrogen or more wind, onshore and offshore, Lloyd's will be at the heart of that conversation. Caroline, the culture piece is critical, certainly. Talent in the industry, there's so many ways that we at the center can facilitate a more attractive Lloyd's market for people that are considering either joining the industry from outside, from a different industry altogether, or coming in new from university or high school. Love your thoughts on that and how our ESG position facilitates that.
It's just really important, isn't it, to make sure that we have the right people in the market to help us write business, both business now and the business of the future. And so we've got to make sure that we have the right skills and the right talent to enable us to do that. And so having a diverse workforce is something that's important to make sure that we can do that. And Lloyds has been leading the way over the last couple of years, particularly around the changes needed, on the culture side, with on the D&I side, particularly for females. And we've got targets that we're working to in the corporation, and also via the managing agents and the rest of the Lloyds community with our culture dashboard and that sort of approach. So it's something that's that's really important to us, and we're doing it as internally within the corporation, but also with the marketplace. And if you look forward to, I guess, future at Lloyds, and you see the the digital talent that we're going to need to be able to deliver that, both internally but also for the market, to be able to to hook in and to be able to to help us with that sort of digital transition, then we need different people to do that. And we're really committed to make sure that we do have that pipeline and that it supports, I guess, all of our ambitions and the different strategic pillars that we have in Lloyds.
That's very helpful, Caroline. And you'll see in the chat we're putting up links to different reports at Lloyds that support vision. D&I, of course, has been a major effort in the Lloyds market for a number of years, and we're seeing progress too. We're seeing an increase in number of women in senior positions. The minority ethnic conversation is very robust these days, so very excited to be part of that. I could have just had no questions for either of you and just gone straight to the Q&A from the audience. So I want to thank everybody for your thoughtful questions, and we will get to as many as we can in just a minute. But very excited to hear what's going to happen on May 17th in the heart of EC3 at 1 Lime Street, if that's still the date.
It's still the date. Yeah, we've got a series of release from lockdown, which has been decreed by the UK government. And the third phase of lockdown date is May 17th, when, if you like, the population at large are, in inverted commas, allowed to return to work. The fourth release date is June 21st, when social distancing measures will be removed. And I would say the UK government is on track to fulfill both measures. In fact, they reported 0 deaths from COVID yesterday. So 0 deaths, and down to a very low incidence. So the rollout of the vaccination program is working well. So in tandem with that date, we said we would reopen the underwriting room on May 17th. Social distancing measures still apply, so it means the room can work at approximately 50% of capacity. So it's higher capacity than would be normal for an office because of the multiple entrances and exits and the sort of thoroughfare way in which the market works. But we're going to run the market as we did in the earlier phases of lockdown, working with certain product lines on certain days, and then move to a full opening of the underwriting room on June 21st. So it opens on May 17th, indeed, Hank. We'll do it quietly, actually, and probably be a bit more celebratory later in June when the social distancing measures are removed. But as you can see from Caroline and I, we've been back, for a few months, Caroline, haven't we? Sort of 2-3 days a week, sort of getting ready. We've been busy doing the hoovering and sweeping up and just making sure the place is tidy for when everyone else comes back.
So speaking of everyone else coming back, that's going to be a process we all go through globally. But Caroline, the virtual underwriting room is gotten a lot of press recently. And let's say you're a broker or an underwriter sitting in your home 30 miles outside of London. You want to bring a risk manager from the U.S. To a meeting. Maybe you're certainly your broker partner in the U.S. And you can do that virtually now. So the allure of Lloyd's as a meeting place physically will always be there, but the opportunity to perhaps spend less time traveling and doing a lot of your work virtually is there. Give us your thoughts on the virtual underwriting room as it looks today.
I think it's been a great development, actually, if you think that this is something that we did as part of Future at Lloyd's, in the first and second the first lockdown last year. And we launched it on the 1st of September when we opened the underwriting room last time after the last lockdown. And really, it's grown from something that we were sort of piloting with, one line of business. And we actually piloted with, US property business. So, we started off with something that's, goes to the heart of what the people on the call today are going to be interested in. And now we've added functionality, and it's available for all products. All of our underwriters and brokers are being encouraged to go on and to access the room. It's got more and more functionality, so it should enable us to be able to mix the virtual and the physical. And you'll be able to see who's online and get appointments with people, whether you're sat in your office in the building or whether you're sat in your home office 30-40 miles away. And you should be able to bring in, as you said, other people into the conversation, and there's video and there's instant chat, as well as sort of that understanding who's available and when they're available. As we move to going back to the underwriting room again sort of next week, I'm really keen to see the take up and how it sort of how it increases, and to see the value that it's going to add as we sort of mixing the different ways of working. I think it shows what we can do, when we put our mind to it, to come up with that sort of digital solution in a really, really short space of time. So at the moment, it's only available, for UK business, but we are looking at how can we expand that, and how can we, bring in our other geographies. And I know that there's a lot of interest in that, certainly, especially, for me, from my teams around the network. So something that we're looking at the moment.
So that's an outcome of COVID-19, or pick your systemic risk that may come down the pike in the future. That's been positive for Lloyds. And the broader insurance industry is expected to be resilient in times of crisis. That's what we do. And is there anything we've missed in this conversation today about how Lloyds has benefited? You hate to combine that in the same sentence as the pandemic, but there have been ways we've transitioned to a better place that might have taken 5 or 10 years had we not been faced with this. So is there anything we've missed in this conversation that you'd like to share with the audience?
So I think, Hank, what a crisis does is it brings focus, doesn't it? At the point of crisis, you've got a point of focus that you need to attend to. And we would sort of say, sat from where we're sat, it's not informed our agenda. We were focused around performance, we were focused around digitalisation, we were focused around culture. But I think it's helped. So you'll always get some naysayers around digitalisation. Do we really need to do this? Is it really going to make a difference? So often the change when it involves technology is behavioural as much as it is technological. So I think COVID's helped massively in that respect, because clearly without technology, we would not have been able to trade as efficiently as we have. So it's allowed us to sort of accelerate some of our thinking in certain areas, particularly where the use of technology is there. And I think it's also allowed us to do 2 other things. One would be to think about what the underwriting room of the future should look like, because clearly we want to get the very best out of how the world should look when we come back. I don't like new normal, I like new better. So what can we do that's better? Caroline's been talking a little bit about how we connect the virtual and the real world. So I think what we've seen is that there is a value proposition in being able to collaborate and to be able to connect socially, and that is valuable in business. So the physical presence here behind me has a value. I think what we need to do is stand that up differently, so that people can see it virtually simultaneously, so that there is a broadcast capability. We don't need the mystique that Caroline felt when she walked past the Lloyds building. What needs to go in there? Tell people, turn it inside out, let people see what's going on, and create that excitement and the buzz of what can be achieved here. So that would be different. And the other thing I think it's done is it's helped to define our purpose. I think we as insurers have a voice. I think all of us in our industry have social purpose beating in our heart. We're here because we care. The vast majority of what we take in premium, we pay back to a customer at their most critical point of need. So there is a social purpose to insurance, and we're at that time in the world when purpose is really important. And I think we've been able to stand up through the crisis and have a voice and express that voice, I hope, well on behalf of the industry, and it's allowed us to do that. So those will be the things that have changed, I think, for me in the past 15 months. Caroline,
anything you want to add to John's comments?
I think it's amazing how resilient we've been, and how we've continued to trade, to continue to support our brokers and our customers, we went into the first lockdown, certainly in the UK, with targets around how much business we wanted to be electronically traded, and as John said, the crises has forced has actually really improved adoption and forced everybody to move on to those sort of placing platforms. So, which has helped us with the future at Lloyds and helped us with the with everybody being able to, I guess, see the value in being able to move to a more digital world. So, there are we should definitely take the positives out of what's been quite a difficult experience for many of us.
And on that note, one of the questions has to do with the rise in the number of MGAs. We've seen that globally, certainly in North America and the UK, where there are a number of people either who've always realized the opportunity in the insurance industry or perhaps new to it, want to attach their capital to opportunities. What's your view on the rise of MGAs around the world? Certainly, we've seen an uptick in the number of cover holders. We have over 4,000 globally, and that's a very efficient distribution means for Lloyd's. It's been around for, at least in the US, I can say 50 or 60 years. What's your thought on this MGA growth, if you will?
So we felt that Lloyd's had a real value proposition for businesses that were looking at the MGA route, and that we were missing out, candidly. It's the old me going back 25 years. When you had ambition to set yourself up in insurance, you wanted a Lloyd's syndicate. That gave you an amazing presence and voice in the insurance market rather than being an MGA. And it does today, so conceptually you get access to the brand, you get access to 180 licenses around the world, you've got the safety of a regulatory framework, you've got a ready-made distribution network, and that's why we set up our Syndicate in a Box idea. I don't think we ever thought, Caroline, that title would live. It was a working title, but we wanted to prove to people that if you wanted to establish yourself in the industry and you wanted to do so with capital, it was yours or third parties, you could do that in Lloyd's. And we gave an undertaking that we would set those businesses up from the get-go within 90 days. And that was part of the thinking around that framework, was that as people look at MGA as a concept, you could do that at Lloyd's and have an immensely more powerful franchise off which to build. But that world now sits firmly and squarely in Caroline's domain.
And we've seen, appetite from MGAs to get, to come into Lloyd's and to put their own capital up, as John said, via either Syndicate in a Box or full syndicate, actually. And I guess you'll have seen in the press CFC, who are joining us at some point later in the year, as well as, we've supported a number of syndicates in a box, to be able to participate in the market. So Carbon is one that we had last year that is operating under that model. So I think moving forward, we're going to see that continue, and I think where MGAs can really differentiate themselves, where they've got some really cool niches, some of them actually, and some great technical skills and expertise in some areas that where they have really unique value propositions. So, there'll be business there that we want to be part of.
So to give you some of the numbers, Hank, there were 3 new syndicates set up for 2021 and 4 syndicates in a box, about $2 billion of gross written premium that was new to the market through that new business framework. Caroline's been a lot more pointed in the way in which she wants to run that process. That's that engineering background, I think, coming through. So, we're a lot more organized around what new syndicates could look like, and we're in discussion with a number of parties that are interested in establishing syndicates at Lloyd's. Some of them are very famous, some of them are less famous, and we've got an interesting pipeline of people that want to talk to us about Syndicate in a Box. So, so we're genuinely excited that the growth that we're looking at could be new business or new business in terms of the ways in which businesses are setting themselves up.
Thank you, John and Caroline. And there's a question about what Lloyd's is looking for going forward in the Syndicate in a Box framework. Happy to go directly to our new entrant in London on that, or you can contact me and I'll set you up with them. There's so many questions. I just really want to get to as many as I can. There's a reference. Sorry. Oh,
I was going to say you can come to me as well. So obviously, I get really involved in all the new things. Actually, it's one of the really interesting parts of what I do.
No, believe me, if it comes to me, Caroline, it goes straight to you after that. I'm just the mailbox for those queries. One of our participants in the call today asked about the City Risk Index, and that was always one of our favorite thought leadership publications of Lloyd's because it gave us an opportunity out here in the field to talk about some really interesting, not just present but future anticipated risks. We talked about a pandemic several years ago that could wreak havoc across the world. It was never really taken forward as an issue by a lot of people, clearly. What's our perspective on perhaps the next iteration of City Risk Index? Are these things that we want to continue promoting thought leadership on? Maybe through a future set. There are a lot of ways that we're doing that right now. I'll leave that question to either of you.
So much to say on it, I think, Hank, and you sort of highlighted future set. Future sets are perspective around how we look at the whole subject of systemic risk. And we ran a series of masterclasses with some pretty neat individuals, both sides of the Atlantic and out of Europe talking. And again, we'll put those in the chat box because you can go and watch them. They're not too long, so they're worth a look around discussing systemic risk. We've also got a green paper and a white paper coming out around climate and how governments are seeing themselves represent their solutions for future infrastructure and looking at the implications of insurance products and services. And we're also working with the Sustainable Markets Initiative, which is a global initiative around dealing with the responsibilities of the planet. They're all action oriented. So our determination is that we turn thought leadership into action, action being products and services. So an awful lot that we could talk about and fill one of these sessions with in terms of our thinking and our appetite.
You're absolutely right. I appreciate that question because we will definitely, as we proceed with Tuesdays with Lloyds going into 2022, we'll be able to build new opportunities for commentary on that from experts in the marketplace. Somebody asked why we don't pursue more admitted licenses in the U.S. I can quickly just answer that. We, as many people know, have relinquished the licenses in the U.S. via Kentucky and Illinois. We had them for over 75 years. They consistently represented less than 1% of Lloyd's premium in the U.S., weren't growing. We realized they were very important to a number of parties, both in London and in the U.S. But looking forward, we excel at E&S. We're number one in the U.S. in that marketplace, and we're number 3 or 4 in reinsurance in any given year. So we decided to focus our resources on doing what we do best, and that's pretty much the straight answer. Admitted alternatives from Lloyd's or admitted options from Lloyd's are available through fronting companies, and there are many of those in the U.S. who work with Lloyd's syndicates currently. So if your customers require an admitted placement, there are ways to get that and still have your risk in the Lloyd's market. Hopefully I answered that okay. Boy, they're quite a... Bermuda has come up. There's a conversation always about Bermuda versus London. There's been a steady flow of capital into Bermuda. Lloyd's is seeing perhaps not as much lately. Either of you, please comment on your perspective on Bermuda versus Lloyd's. And again, a big question, but I didn't want to let it go.
No, you shouldn't let it go. I doff my hat to Bermuda. And, I think when you go back, class 2001, class 2005, I think Lloyd's missed a trick, honestly, by not thinking differently around the people it could attract to the marketplace, and Bermuda stole in and did fantastically well. I think the markets are much more complementary today than they were. We do constantly think about whether we should have a representative capability in Bermuda or not. It's a thought process we go through. And we would do that clearly in partnership with businesses that currently operate in Bermuda and operate at Lloyd's. So we have a healthy working relationship with the island, and we have a healthy working relationship with the regulators. I would say we're different, and I'm bound to say that, aren't I? So my view is completely biased in that we are a true marketplace. We have the opportunity for the businesses that operate here to operate under a single banner, effectively to create reverse flow, multinational business, single points of cover, which Bermuda finds slightly harder to do. So I think the markets at the moment are complementary. I would agree that to a point in time, there was a greater flow of capital to Bermuda than to Lloyd's. I would say that we'll see a bit of a reversal in trend there as we begin to think more expansively about the opportunities that Lloyd's could present. And again, you know, Caroline touched on it in her world as to how we think we can look at different distribution channels, different types of insurance vehicles. You know, as you said in your introductory remarks, the first onshore ILS PCC cell was set up at Lloyd's this year. Lloyd's is the only onshore vehicle in the UK that can operate captives. There is no other. So there's a lot that we can do and a lot that we're thinking through we could do differently. Strapping behind the value of the brand, strapping behind that the licenses that we've got, strapping behind that the regulatory framework. And I think there's a lot more we can do with the franchise.
Thank you, John. Okay, I unfortunately am not going to be able to put lessons learned from Brexit in this conversation, nor, well, there's a new Labour mayor in London. Maybe we just move on to the next question unless Caroline or John want to comment on that. This is getting to be like a LinkedIn post, you know, anything goes, but that's okay. Welcome to questions.
It's the same mayor, he's been re-elected. Okay. Congratulations to Sadiq Khan.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, let's switch to Caroline for a second on marine. There have been a couple questions about Lloyd's commitment to the marine marketplace. That's how we started, right? 330 years ago.
We've got a long history, haven't we, in the marine market, and you know, I guess at some point, you know, syndicates were, you know, sort of marine syndicates, weren't they? So, I mean, when we looked at the performance work a few years ago, there were some areas that were probably slightly disproportionately hit in terms of that drive to profitability, and you know, marine was an area where you know, rates had sunk quite low, and there was work to do. I think when you look at the performance of a particular class, there's always people in it that are doing well. You never get any class where there's where everybody's losing money. And I think what we've managed to do when we've looked at trying to improve the performance of the marine book is to support the people who were performing. And actually, as the market has changed, there's been a number of those that have been able to actually take advantage of the opportunity and to grow their footprint and to support the businesses that and the customers and the brokers that maybe have been impacted by some of the syndicates that have been having to do some of that sort of remedial work. So it has been an opportunity for some, and we continue to support people who can help us with driving a sustainable, profitable performance. Marine, we've got a long history in marine, and we will continue to rank marine sort of moving forwards as well.
Thank you, Caroline. We're coming up on 2 minutes. I've got a couple more questions. If John and Caroline are able to stay with us, great. I won't assume that you will or can.
Go for it.
So great, thank you. And the audience, we'll have to have you stay with us as well. Looking forward to 2021 and even beyond, there's a question about growth in the Lloyd's market. It specifically references the US and Canadian economies that are ticking up, and hopefully we stay on the right track. That provides significant opportunity for Lloyd's to grow in its number 1 and number 3 markets globally. What's your perspective on the ability of the Lloyd's market to come back to the well, if you will, at points during the year when they feel they have an opportunity, they want to take advantage of it now? And of course, in the E&S sector, you can take advantage of it now because you're not filing rates or forms. What's your view on our opportunity available to them?
So a couple of quick things. We wanted to do a bit of a check-in with the syndicates during Q1 to sort of see how the landscape looked around the business plans we'd signed off. Many people misinterpreted that as a negative process. In fact, it was meant to be as positive as it was negative. Have market conditions changed? Are there more opportunities that we're not crystallizing? How do we support syndicates? So one, we wanted to go through that, which we did. Two, we've got a pretty tried and tested process in place now that allows syndicates to represent their plans mid-year. And our undertaking is that we will review those plans in 5 working days. I'll say that again, 5 working days, so people understand the timeframes we work to. So provided they're presenting a plan where the growth is good growth, it represents an enhanced opportunity for the business plan. And we think there's the right balance between exposure and price. If it passes those hurdles, we'll review and approve it in 5 working days. So there's nothing preventing someone from revisiting their plan through the year. I think macroeconomically, it's a hard read. I think we're in the same boat as everyone looking out. I think the construction industry is underpinning the economies in both the US and the UK and creating sort of slightly false environment at the moment. The world's borrowed $15 trillion in the last 15 months. It's a massive slice of GDP. So you feel that there are still some challenges that will reverberate post-COVID that are yet to come through and will inevitably have an impact on insurers, particularly on some of the liability classes. So we're alert to that. As I say, you can see certain lines of business, you can see the winners that are coming through in the industries that are succeeding. So our job is to find that path for profitable growth, but we need to do so with a degree of discipline and caution to ensure that we hold performance true to its core objective, that we get that right, but do so in a way that allows the right people to grow at the right time.
Thank you, John. Everyone's going to be looking forward to that those next few months coming up for solutions in the Lloyd's market. There's a question or two on claims, but again, I'll defer in respect to everybody's time. We're going to have a separate Tuesdays with Lloyd's claims session coming up, so stay on the lookout for that. There's also a question about how can I work more effectively with my Lloyd's broker if they don't necessarily understand certain elements of future at Lloyd's. That's a conversation we can certainly have with you. So feel free to reach out to me or to Enya Yi. She's my colleague here on the call today, who's again the brains behind this whole Tuesdays with Lloyd's success. Or there are a number of other colleagues around the U.S., Canada, and Latin America that you can reach out to. So please don't hesitate to look us up. Go to Lloyds.com. Go to the North America, Latin America section. You'll find us. We're here to help you. On that note, again, I want to thank John and Caroline. Is there anything I've left out? Would you like to say anything else before we move on?
You've done well, Hank, as ever. And thank you very much for everybody joining us today. And thank you for your terrific support of the Lloyd's marketplace. And don't hesitate to give either Hank or the team in the States or us feedback directly. We want to make it as easy to do business with you as we possibly can. But thanks for listening to us today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you, John and Caroline.
Yeah, it's been really great to be part of the conversation. So thanks for inviting me along, and hope to be able to participate again later on in the year and to keep the conversation going afterwards, actually, with you all over in the Americas.
Absolutely. And we look forward to having you over here in person as soon as we can make that happen. So thanks to both of you. For everybody else on the call today, thank you for joining us. Next Tuesday, the 18th of May, we're going to have an energy roundtable led by Ted Dimitri from Higginbotham in Texas. The roundtable is going to include Munich Re, MS Amlin, and Canopius. That's part of our syndicate showcase. So look forward to seeing you all then. In the meantime, please stay safe and don't hesitate ever to reach out to us for a hand. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Hank. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.